The cafe was quiet that morning, sunlight spilling generously through the tall windows and catching the slight dust motes in the air. Sitting at a corner table, a steaming cup of coffee in front, the hum of muted conversation felt almost distant. Then they walked in, two women, both around 40, each with a presence that immediately commanded attention without demanding it. The first was a 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair cascading over her shoulders, lightly tanned skin with subtle freckles, soft laugh lines around her dark brown eyes, and a curvy, graceful figure that carried itself with effortless poise. She wore a fitted blouse tucked into tailored slacks, her posture upright but inviting, confident yet approachable. The second was a 40-year-old American Latino woman, similarly striking. Long black hair, dark brown eyes, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, and the same graceful, mature elegance. Her outfit was casual chic, a soft blouse and skirt that moved fluidly as she walked, complementing her curvy figure and confident demeanor. They selected a table near him, and the first subtle detail caught his attention. The way they sat unusually close, chairs angled almost conspiratorially toward him. It wasn't overt, not even intentionally flirty at first glance, but it made the space around him feel smaller, more intimate. The faint scent of coffee, mixed with hints of floral perfume, lingered in the air, wrapping around him in a way that made his senses sharper. Their eyes flicked toward him occasionally, then back to their conversation, but the glances were quiet, measured, and oddly magnetic. One brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, the motion so slight that it might have gone unnoticed if he weren't paying close attention, but he did. The soft warmth radiating from her presence made his chest tighten ever so slightly. The other woman leaned forward to adjust her coffee cup, her knee nearly brushing his own. A small jolt of awareness ran through him at the proximity. There was no intentional provocation, only a graceful closeness, but it carried an unspoken tension he couldn't ignore. Small gestures, the tilt of a head, a shared laugh, a fleeting smile, echoed quietly in his chest. It was as if the room had condensed around this subtle dance, where physical proximity and emotional curiosity intertwined. Even the ambient sounds, the clinking of cups, the faint hiss of the espresso machine, seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the heightened awareness of their presence. The light caught their hair, made the curves of their figures soft and inviting, and accentuated their mature beauty. Every micro-movement, every glance, every subtle shift in posture felt charged, like the air itself was acknowledging the unspoken connection forming across the table. He sipped his coffee slowly, trying to appear casual, but the awareness of their nearness, the warmth, the scent, the subtle gestures, kept his thoughts oscillating between curiosity and hesitation. The cafe was bright, ordinary, yet in that corner, an invisible current had formed, one that hinted at connection, intrigue, and the slow-burn possibility of something unspoken. The encounter, simple and ordinary on the surface, had already planted the seed of curiosity and tension, a quiet beginning to a story that would unfold through glances, gestures, and the subtle chemistry of proximity. The morning carried on, and the cafe's gentle hum felt both familiar and strangely heightened. Sitting at the same corner table, the awareness of the two women nearby had shifted from curiosity to something more palpable. The 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, and soft laugh lines around her dark brown eyes leaned slightly back in her chair, observing with a quiet, composed elegance. Her fitted blouse and tailored slacks reflected a graceful maturity, and the soft glow of sunlight streaming through the window highlighted the contours of her figure and the gentle curve of her posture. Beside her, the 40-year-old American Latina woman mirrored the quiet poise of her companion. Her long black hair caught the morning light as she sipped her coffee, dark brown eyes flicking subtly toward him. Her soft blouse and flowing skirt moved gently as she shifted in her seat, a simple motion that conveyed both comfort and an understated awareness of the space they shared. Together, they radiated a warmth that seemed to fold the small cafe corner into a private, intimate sphere. It was in the little details that he noticed the tension building. A laugh between them would pause mid-sentence, their dark eyes drifting naturally toward him, holding his gaze a fraction longer than casual politeness required. The slight brush of a hand adjusting a hair strand, the deliberate yet casual way one leaned closer to her companion, the subtle shift of knees under the table. All small gestures, yet magnified by the closeness. He felt the heat of awareness creeping along his skin, subtle but undeniable. The warmth of their presence, combined with the faint floral hints of perfume, created a soft, enveloping intimacy, making his chest tighten ever so slightly. It was electric in its quietness. No words were needed, only proximity and gentle gestures. The cafe, once ordinary, now seemed charged, as if the sunlight, the clatter of cups, and even the faint aroma of baked pastries were all conspiring to heighten this subtle tension. His eyes caught the way the Caucasian woman tilted her head while listening, a soft smile curving at the edges of her lips, hinting at amusement and quiet intrigue. The Latina, in turn, brushed her fingers lightly over her cup, the movement bringing her hand just near enough to his without touching. Each small motion seemed loaded with meaning, sending pulses of awareness through him, leaving him suspended in a delicate balance of curiosity and restraint. Every glance, every gesture, every near touch was a conversation in itself. Their attention was partly on him, yet never overtly, maintaining a line between observation and engagement. It created an invisible tension that hovered in the sunlit corner, drawing him in without a word, a magnetic pull built on shared awareness and quiet, graceful presence. As he took another slow sip of coffee, he realized that the ordinary cafe visit had transformed into something charged with subtle possibility. Each glance, each soft laugh, and each gentle gesture was a thread weaving the beginning of a connection, delicate yet undeniable. The slow burn had begun, and the awareness of their proximity promised that this day would unfold with unspoken intrigue, curiosity, and attention that refused to be ignored. The cafe hummed around him, the clinking of cups and soft murmurs of conversation blending into a backdrop he barely noticed. The two women, both 40 years old, seemed to occupy the space with an effortless ease that drew attention without demanding it. The American Caucasian woman with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, and soft laugh lines around her dark brown eyes leaned slightly forward, her elbows resting lightly on the table, head tilted just so as she listened. The American Latina woman mirrored her grace, dark brown eyes flicking toward him intermittently, long black hair catching the sunlight, a soft, knowing smile playing on her lips. It was the pauses in their conversation that carried the most weight. Words would falter mid-sentence, laughter would trail off, and both women's gazes would drift naturally toward him. The brief moments of eye contact weren't accidental. They were loaded with curiosity, a subtle acknowledgement that his presence had become part of their rhythm. The air seemed to vibrate with anticipation, though the gestures were delicate, refined, and entirely YouTube-safe. The way they shifted in their seats heightened the tension. Knees angled slightly closer to him, hands brushing almost accidentally on the table, hair flicked back with movements that were both casual and deliberate. Each small motion sent a ripple of awareness through him. The faint scent of their perfumes mingled with the aroma of fresh coffee, wrapping around him and grounding the moment in intimate sensory detail. He noticed the Caucasian woman's soft laugh lines deepen as she smiled quietly, a subtle curve that spoke of maturity, warmth, and an unspoken playfulness. The Latina woman's eyes crinkled ever so slightly at the corners as she caught his glance, holding it a heartbeat longer than necessary. These silent signals were more potent than words. They communicated interest, curiosity, and a delicate dance of emotional intimacy that he felt in his chest more than he saw with his eyes. The sunlight streaming through the cafe windows illuminated every detail. The soft shimmer of their hair, the contours of their lightly tanned skin, the graceful posture of their curvy figures, and the way their subtle movements seemed to orbit around him without leaving the bounds of propriety. It created a moment suspended in time, a slow burn where glances, gestures, and silent communication became a language of their own. Even the mundane became charged. The way one of them reached for a sugar packet, fingers brushing slightly against his hand, sent a spark of awareness shooting through him. The tilt of a chair, the quiet laugh shared between them, the gentle lean forward, all of it was a choreography of subtle attraction and shared curiosity. In that bright, ordinary cafe corner, a private world had formed. Silent signals, brief touches, and lingering glances conveyed a message far more intimate than conversation could. The tension was delicate but undeniable, an unspoken pull between three people navigating the beginning of a connection that was both thrilling and restrained. As he sat back, taking in the quiet magnetism of their presence, he realized that this slow, silent dialogue had already started to shape the day, an invisible thread of curiosity and emotional intimacy weaving itself into something he couldn't ignore. The cafe's ambient chatter and the soft hiss of the espresso machine faded into the background as awareness of their presence grew stronger. Sitting there, the 22-year-old man felt an unmistakable pull toward the two women, both 40 years old, whose effortless elegance seemed to fill the bright cafe space. The American Caucasian woman with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, soft laugh lines, and dark brown eyes sat upright yet relaxed, her posture graceful, her gaze occasionally flicking toward him with subtle curiosity. Beside her, the American Latina woman mirrored the poise and quiet confidence of her companion, long black hair catching the sunlight, dark eyes that seemed to measure him gently, and a soft, teasing smile that hinted at awareness. He hesitated, caught between the desire to engage and the fear of overstepping. Their proximity had been quietly building tension, knees slightly closer under the table, hands brushing almost imperceptibly against his, subtle glances that lingered longer than polite acknowledgement allowed. Each movement seemed deliberate yet natural, their confidence and ease amplifying the pull he felt. The cafe felt suddenly intimate, though no words had been spoken to him yet, and the bright light from the windows highlighted every curve, every subtle gesture that made his heart quicken. The scent of coffee mingled with the faint floral perfume of the women, wrapping around him like a warm, invisible embrace. Every glance and movement felt charged, as if their attention, though casual, was calibrated to him. The Caucasian woman tilted her head slightly, a soft smile at the corners of her lips, and the Latina's eyes crinkled with the faintest hint of amusement. Their body language spoke volumes. Subtle shoulder shifts toward him, a gentle lean as they discussed something between themselves, and the occasional brush of their hands across the table, a contact electric in its delicacy. The hesitation was internal as much as external. He felt the pull, the curiosity, the sudden awareness of the emotional tension in the space. The women's subtle acknowledgement of his presence, without overt flirtation, was simultaneously thrilling and intimidating. The bright environment made every movement, every gesture, and every shared glance feel sharper, clearer, more alive. Light bounced off their hair, brushed across their skin, and caught the fine details of their expressions, illuminating the quiet playfulness and gentle intrigue. He imagined leaning in to say something, but restraint held him back, a polite hesitation rooted in awareness of boundaries. Yet the recognition in their eyes, soft, inviting, slightly mischievous, told him that this was a dance they were all aware of. The pull was mutual, unspoken but undeniable. Every slight gesture, from a hand brushing a coffee cup to a playful glance, carried meaning, a private conversation conducted without words. By the time the next round of coffee arrived, the hesitation had deepened into something more, recognition of shared curiosity and subtle connection. The slow burn of awareness had intensified, leaving him acutely conscious of their nearness, their smiles, their gentle movements. In the bright cafe corner, three people now occupied a small, charged world of unspoken possibility, each aware of the tension, the intrigue, and the quiet promise of what might come next. The cafe seemed to shrink in his perception, the bright morning light now highlighting the delicate interplay of gestures and glances between them. Sitting there, the 22-year-old man felt an almost magnetic pull toward the two women, both 40 years old, whose presence had been quietly asserting itself all morning. The American Caucasian woman, with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, soft laugh lines, and dark brown eyes, leaned slightly toward him as she passed the sugar for her coffee. Her hand brushed against his ever so lightly, deliberate enough to notice, gentle enough to feel almost accidental. Beside her, the American Latino woman shifted in her seat, her long black hair falling over one shoulder as she leaned forward, subtly closing the distance between them. The soft curve of her shoulders and the warmth radiating from her posture made the small cafe corner feel intimate, charged in a way that words could not capture. The sunlight streaming through the window caught her hair, giving it a slight shimmer, and highlighted the gentle contours of her lightly tanned skin, creating a quiet, inviting glow. He felt the brush of their hands linger in his memory, small but electric, as if the universe had condensed in that single, fleeting touch. His chest tightened with awareness, a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation, as the subtle intimacy of their nearness became impossible to ignore. Their soft smiles, the faint crinkle at the corners of their dark brown eyes, and the gentle tilt of their heads suggested awareness, an unspoken understanding of the silent connection slowly building. The cafe's ordinary sounds, the clinking of cups, the quiet murmur of other patrons, seemed to fade into a soft background hum, allowing him to focus entirely on the small gestures. The Caucasian woman's hand returned to her coffee, yet the warmth of her touch lingered, a ghost of sensation on his skin. The Latina's fingers brushed her cup as she laughed softly at something the first woman had said, her elbow nearly grazing his own. The awareness of these near touches created a tension that was as thrilling as it was restrained, a slow-burning magnetism that drew him in without a word spoken. Even their body language spoke volumes. Knees subtly angled closer, shoulders tilting toward him, hands hovering near his in ways that felt natural yet purposeful. There was an elegance to their movements, a confidence that carried a quiet flirtation. YouTube safe, respectful, but undeniably charged. He noticed every tiny detail, the way sunlight glinted off their hair, the gentle shift of their weight, the way their laughter carried warmth that seemed directed only at him. He sipped his coffee, trying to remain composed, yet the small, almost imperceptible gestures had his thoughts racing. The subtle connection was no longer just a curiosity. It had become a quiet tension that pulsed through him, an emotional spark igniting in a space defined by delicate touches, glances, and shared awareness. In that bright cafe corner, the first meaningful brush of hands and the soft nearness of their presence marked the beginning of something unspoken yet undeniably magnetic. A slow burn that promised more, if only he dared to lean closer. The cafe, bright and ordinary in every other sense, had transformed into a space charged with quiet intimacy. Sitting there, the 22-year-old man felt the weight of awareness pressing gently against him. The two women, both 40 years old, radiated a presence that was simultaneously confident and inviting. The American Caucasian woman with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, soft laugh lines, and dark brown eyes leaned slightly forward, her movements unhurried, graceful, deliberate yet natural. Her blouse caught the sunlight, accentuating the gentle curve of her posture and the warmth she exuded. Beside her, the American Latino woman mirrored the elegance and poise of her companion. Her long black hair shimmered in the morning light, dark eyes holding his gaze for just a beat too long, a soft smile hinting at shared understanding. Finally, words were exchanged. A question about the cafe's new pastries led to a small conversation, tentative yet genuine. Their voices were warm, melodic, each tone carrying a subtle invitation to linger, to notice, to connect. The air between them seemed to hum with possibility, every glance, smile, and gesture layered with meaning that he could feel more than see. The slow burn that had been simmering for hours now edged closer to a breakthrough, fragile but undeniable. The Caucasian woman's hand rested near his on the table, fingers lightly brushing against his as she emphasized a point, and he felt a spark, soft, electric grounding. The Latina mirrored the closeness, her elbow near his arm, movements casual yet suggestive of comfort, a subtle acknowledgement of the connection forming. There was no rush, no overt gesture, only a dance of shared awareness, where every slight touch, every glance, every unspoken expression built an emotional bridge between them. Sunlight spilled across the table, illuminating the gentle contours of their lightly tanned skin, the soft laugh lines around their eyes, and the subtle freckles that gave them a natural, approachable beauty. The cafe sounds, the clatter of cups, murmured conversations, the hiss of espresso, seemed distant now, swallowed by the quiet intimacy of this shared moment. Every sense was heightened. The warmth of the sunlight, the soft fragrance of coffee and their perfumes, the faint brush of fingers, and the rhythmic cadence of their voices. The emotional breakthrough was subtle but undeniable. The hesitation that had kept him on the edge of engagement now melted into a mutual recognition, each of them aware of the quiet pull, the delicate tension, the possibility of connection without forcing it. Their smiles carried warmth, their eyes curiosity, and their gestures an unspoken permission to lean into the moment, to savor the closeness. He felt a soft thrill, a quiet excitement that wasn't overwhelming but persistent, like sunlight warming the skin on a cool morning. The proximity, the shared awareness, and the gentle touches had woven a tapestry of emotional intimacy that was delicate, respectful, and charged with slow-burning desire. For the first time, the possibility of deeper connection felt tangible, a promise suspended in light, gesture, and subtle acknowledgement. The cafe's bright morning light now seemed almost celebratory, illuminating the quiet warmth that had developed in the corner where they all sat. The 22-year-old man felt the tension of the earlier hours melt into a gentle familiarity. The two women, both 40 years old, radiated a graceful confidence softened by vulnerability, a combination that had held him captivated from the moment they'd arrived. The American Caucasian woman, with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, and soft laugh lines around her dark brown eyes, leaned slightly toward him, a subtle gesture of comfort and shared awareness. Beside her, the American Latina woman mirrored the posture and poise of her companion, dark brown eyes warm and engaging, long black hair catching the sunlight, the gentle curve of her smile conveying both curiosity and quiet joy. The conversation had found a natural rhythm. Laughter flowed easily now, soft and melodic, each word carrying the undertones of connection without the need for grand declarations. They had talked about trivial things at first, coffee blends, favorite pastries, and the bustling morning outside, but even those light exchanges were rich with subtle intimacy. Every glance lingered a little longer. Every small gesture carried meaning. Every shared smile felt like a silent acknowledgement of the thread that had been weaving between them throughout the morning. The Caucasian woman's hand brushed lightly against his as she reached for her cup, and instead of pulling away, he let the warmth linger, feeling the subtle electricity of touch. The Latina mirrored the ease of that gesture, her elbow resting near his, fingers brushing the table in a rhythm that was quietly synchronized with his own movements. The proximity was no longer accidental. It was a gentle dance of mutual comfort and emotional closeness, a quiet acknowledgement of shared presence and subtle attraction. Sunlight poured in through the windows, highlighting the contours of their lightly tanned skin, the soft freckles scattered across their cheeks, and the faint laugh lines that framed their expressive eyes. Their hair glimmered in the bright morning light, emphasizing their mature, graceful beauty. The aroma of coffee and pastries mingled with the faint, lingering fragrance of their perfumes, creating a sensory cocoon that made the space feel private, intimate, and yet entirely ordinary to the rest of the cafe. The slow-burn tension that had defined the morning finally found a gentle resolution. The hesitations, the quiet glances, the brief, meaningful touches, all of it had coalesced into a warm, satisfying sense of connection. They sat closer now, comfortably so, the earlier uncertainty replaced with mutual recognition and ease. No words were necessary to convey understanding. The shared awareness, the subtle gestures, and the calm, inviting smiles communicated everything. As he leaned back in his chair, taking in the scene, he realized that what had begun as curiosity and subtle tension had transformed into emotional intimacy and quiet attraction. The connection was unforced, respectful, and genuine, a perfect example of the delicate beauty of slow-burn romance. In the bright corner of the cafe, three people had found a shared warmth, a tentative yet undeniable bond, and a quiet promise of something more, all built through glances, gestures, and subtle acknowledgement. The morning had ended, but the lingering awareness of their connection promised that this was just the beginning, a slow, sweet journey of understanding, closeness, and the thrill of mutual attraction that was tender, YouTube-safe, and emotionally fulfilling.